Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you my top 10 shortcuts for Excel with hotkeys for both Windows and Mac. Now, as well as speeding up your most commonly used tasks within Excel and making you much more efficient, you'll see in at least one case, hotkeys can actually add functionality that the standard user interface doesn't provide. So let's get straight to it. The first shortcut we'll look at is the F2 key on a Windows machine or Control combined with U on a Mac. This allows us to edit the cell contents and jump to the end of a cell with our cursor. So simply selecting a cell, pressing F2 will jump you right to the end of that cell's contents and allow you to edit directly. It's also really useful for looking at the formula references within any cell. So pressing F2 here, for example, will show me and highlight the cells that are involved in the calculation. So C2 times D2 here. Now you can double click into cells to achieve the same effect. But depending on where you click when you're doing this, if my cursor happens to land just in front of that asterisk, for example, and I click on another cell and try to double click, it's instead going to pull in a reference. So it's a lot more accurate as well as being quicker to simply click on a cell, press F2 or Control and U, and then move to the next cell just like that. Next, we have the Control and Grave key. Now, this on my keyboard is just to the left of one and above the tab key. It might be in a slightly different place on your keyboard, but pressing Control and Grave will toggle the show formulas. And this allows you to see at a quick glance where your values are and where your formulas are. And you can now also click just once on any cell with a formula in order to see those cell references right there. To toggle this off and return to the standard view, just press Control and Grave again. Number 3 on the list is using your keyboard arrow keys to move around and combining that with Shift to select and Control to jump. So rather than using your mouse, you can simply use the arrow keys to very quickly move from cell to cell. And if you want to move even quicker, you can combine that with the Control key to jump to the end of the data region. So if I hold Control here and I press the down arrow key, it's going to go to the last cell with data in, and then I've got blank cells underneath. And from this cell, if I was to use Control and down again, I've got no more data, so it will jump me right to the end of the spreadsheet. And again, to go up, I can use Control and the up arrow key, and it will go to the first cell with data, and then pressing Control and up again will go to the end once again. I can use this to the right, so if I use Control and to the right, starting at cell A1, I'll go to the end of my data region here, and then if I use it once more, I'm only going to skip one cell in this case and go to the next cell with data, and again, Control and right will take me to the end of that data. So you can very quickly navigate around large spreadsheets using Control and the arrow keys. Now you can use the keyboard arrow keys and Shift to select cells as you go, and you can go in both dimensions here as well. And you can actually combine Shift and Control to both move through large swathes of data as well as select on the way. So for example, if I start on A1 and I hold Control and I hold Shift and I press down, I'm going to move to the end of my data region and select everything on the way. And I can do the same thing by holding Control Shift and pressing the right arrow key, and I've got all of my data region there selected. Number 4 on the list is using the Control Z and Control Y keys on Windows or Command Z and Command Y on a Mac. And we can use this respectively to undo and redo actions. So you can, of course, use the buttons up here to undo and redo, but it's a lot quicker to use these shortcuts. And it's especially handy for when you're making changes and you want to go back and forth to see the effect of those changes, for example, on a model. So if I was to change the unit price here, for example, to 2, and I just want to very quickly go back and forth, I can press Control Z to see the effects here, Control Y, and I can just go back and forth and very quickly analyze my changes. Number 5 is using Control C to copy and Control V to paste, or on a Mac, Command C to copy and Command V to paste. And if you're using the standard copy and paste where you're selecting, right-clicking, copying, then going to where you want, and then right-clicking and pasting, that's very slow. So the very first thing you should be doing is learning these actions here to do a quick Control C here and a Control V. And that's your standard copy and paste. If you wanted to use your other paste options, you might still use the mouse. There are other shortcuts for these as well, but the handiest one to know is the standard Control C and Control V. Now, to add to copying and pasting, there's another couple of really useful shortcuts to know, and that's Control D and Control R. and it's best shown with an example. So let's say we had to work out a tax amount in here, and that was just gross minus net, and we wanted to copy this down all the way. Now, one way you could do this is using Control C and then selecting all of your cells using Control V. But another method we can use here is we can just jump to the end of our data, and let's use one of our newly learned shortcuts here, Control and down to go to the end. And then I'm just going to press right once. Now I know I'm covering all my data here, so I'm just going to use Control and Shift and up to go to the very top. And it's going to find the first cell with that new formula. And if I just use Control and D, it's going to copy whatever is in the top cell within my selection and copy it down to the remainder of my selection. So I've copied my entire formula down with just one click really. So if you're looking to add a few formulas in, you can just very quickly select your cells, Control D, and save yourself some time right there. Control and R works in the same way. So if I had a selection like this and I was to use Control and R, it would take what is in the leftmost cell, whether that's a value or a formula, and copy it to the right. So in this case, it's just a value. So I'm going to get that same value pasted all the way across. Number 6 on the list is Control and the open square bracket key, which is the shortcut for trace precedents. And interestingly, this has some added functionality compared to just using the user interface as well. Let's take a look at the user interface first. So if we were to click on a cell and then use trace precedents, it would show us all of the cells that are involved within that calculation. So here we're doing C2 times D2. And if we were to double click on those arrows, we would jump to those cells. Or if you're starting on that cell and you double click, it will jump you to the cell which is using that within its calculation. The arrowhead in this case makes clear that these cells are feeding into this cell's formula. If we now apply trace precedents to a cell that references an external worksheet, we'll see we get a dashed line here indicating the external reference. If we double click on this, we can see the name of the workbook, we can see the worksheet within and the cell reference. If we press OK to try and jump to it though, that won't work. But interestingly, using Control and the open square bracket will open that spreadsheet up. We can use this shortcut to select all of the cells involved in the calculation. So for example, over here, we have a VLOOKUP. Using Control and the open square bracket, we'll jump to and select all of the cells involved. So here we've got our reference that we're looking up, and here's the table array all selected for us. Next, let's look at how we can effectively apply and use filters. On a Windows machine, to apply quick filters, you can use Control, Shift, and L, or on a Mac, Command, Shift, and F, and that will apply your filter. Toggle it off, you can use the same key combination. Now, once you've applied your filter, to effectively navigate through it, you can use the arrow keys, and if you use Alt and the down arrow key, that will open up your filter there on the column that you're on. And you can use the down arrow keys to navigate through, using 4 to open any submenus, left to close them. And as you move down to your actual items, you can start using the space bar here to very quickly toggle items on and off. So if you've got a large list that you need to go through, you can use that. And once you're done, you can press Enter for OK. And to remove all your filters, you can just press that same key combination of Control Shift L or Command Shift F. At number 8, we have how to effectively select columns and rows. Now this depends on where your active cell is, so either by clicking on the cell that you want or by moving around with the arrow keys. So let's say I'm on cell B2. I can use Control and the spacebar here to select the entire column, or I can use Shift and spacebar to select the entire row 2 there. Number 9 leads nicely on from selecting columns and rows to how we can add and remove selected rows and columns. So on a Windows machine, this will be Control, Shift, and plus to add a row, or on a Mac, Command, Shift, and plus. And then to remove rows on a Windows machine, it'll be Control and minus, or Command and minus on a Mac. As an example then, if we wanted to add 2 columns between A and B, you would first select the number of columns you want, like this, using the left click, then you would right click and press Insert, and that will insert your 2 columns there. And then to delete these again, you could just right click once you've got those columns selected and press Delete. Using the keyboard, we can just use Control and Spacebar and Shift and Right to select the number of columns that we want, and then just use Control, Shift, and plus to add in our columns, and Control and minus to get rid of them. And this works just the same for rows. So Shift and Space, and let's say I wanted to add 3 rows above row 5, I could just press Shift and down a couple of times and then use Control Shift and plus to add those rows and Control minus to remove them again. At number 10, we have the F4 key on Windows and Command and T on the Mac. This allows us to switch between relative and absolute cell references very quickly and easily. As an example, we've got gross amount here being calculated at a flat rate of 20%, but let's say that was variable and we wanted that to reference a cell, so we could have something typed in here, and we can reference that cell rather than typing this in directly. And I wanted that copied down all the way, so I'm just going to take a few cells here. I'm just going to use Control and D to copy that down. Now obviously that's not going to work because our cell references are relative and they're moving as we're copying this formula down. What we want to do here then is fix our cell reference so that it's pinned on cell G2 always. So we can do that by putting a $ in front of the G and in front of the 2 here. And if we copy that formula down now, we're going to see that that works because each cell is pinned to cell G2. Now we can do this very quickly rather than typing in those $ by simply clicking on the cell here that we're interested in and pressing the F4 key or Command T on a Mac, and that will wrap our cells here. So we're fixing the G and the second row. Pressing it again will fix just our row. Once more just our column, and pressing it again will return us to a full relative reference. That covers my top 10 shortcuts for Excel. Hopefully you found that useful and there's a few new ones you can incorporate to your work. Now, as always, top 10s are subjective, and I'm keen to hear about your favorite Excel shortcuts. So be sure to leave something in the comments below. Thank you. Hi, I'm Amir, and if you enjoyed this video and would like to learn more using Excel effectively, why not check out my course at excelonlinelearning.com. It offers a streamlined, easy to learn and complete run through of Excel's core features. You get hands-on experience along with quizzes, exercises, checkpoints, and a project to solidify your learning. You can find a link in the description below, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.